camera.
Our speaker this morning, Sheldon Richman, is editor of the Freeman magazine, one of the libertarian movement's most prestigious journals, if not the most prestigious journal. It's published by the Foundation for Economic Education, which is one of the libertarian movement's oldest organizations. Formerly a senior editor at the Cato Institute, Sheldon has long served as senior fellow at the Future of Freedom Foundation. He contributes a weekly op-ed and a monthly article for our journal Freedom Daily. He's the author of 3 books, all of which have been published by FFF: Separating School and State, How to Liberate America's Families, Your Money or Your Life, Why We Should Abolish the Income Tax, and Tethered Citizens, Time to Repeal the Welfare State. His articles on a wide range of libertarian issues have been published by such publications as the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, USA Today, Washington Times, Cato Policy Report, and many others. One of the highlights of my time in the libertarian movement has been working with this guy as a colleague and a friend. He's been writing for us for some 15 years, and it's a big honor to have his friendship and his association with FFF. Title of Sheldon's talk is War is Peace and Other Things the Government Wants You to Believe. Sheldon Richman.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I wanted to start off just on a personal note and express my appreciation to Jacob for doing this second year in a row. And this is an extremely important, this is now an institution in my view, and the importance of it cannot be overstated, not just for us all to get together and get our batteries recharged and see people we haven't seen or we don't get to see very often, and to hear talks and learn things that, and facts and applications of theory that maybe we hadn't thought of before, but it is almost like a unintended consequence, good consequence. It has created a dialogue between people who don't normally get together, which I think is extremely important. Other people have mentioned this, but the mixing of libertarians with people who are to the left but who are anti-state, sincerely anti-state and anti-war. It's very important that we are at least having this annual meeting now, as it's becoming, to mix both socially and then also in these formal sessions. So I think that's extremely important. It's as important as all the other functions that this event is serving. So it makes me very, very happy that it's happening. It's overdue. And we need to start talking to each other because we have common ground. And we may have, as suggested yesterday by Glenn Greenwald, we may have more common ground than we even realize, because times have changed and people get new insights with events. And so I'm very optimistic on that count. Now the topic is, it's funny about topics. War is peace and other things the government wants us to believe. You know, these events are planned very far in advance. So you get a call from Jacob or maybe Stephanie, I get an email from saying, we need a title for your talk. Say, this is what, 5 months out, I don't know. And you're not thinking about the conference 5 months ago in advance. You're thinking about all the other stuff you got to get done, the deadline. So then you have to stop and say, she needs a title, they need a title. I got to give them a title. So my strategy, I don't know what other people do, is to come up with like an umbrella title, because I don't know what I'm going to be interested in 5 months. Something's going to catch my fancy. Things are going to happen between now and 5 months that I'm going to say, that's what I got to talk about. If I decide back then, I'm going to say, I'm not going to have quite the zeal because something new has come along, some new event. So I try to think of a title that's enough of an umbrella that I can fit like almost anything under it. So that's this title. So I hope it bears some relationship. I think it will. But anyway, if you're don't strain too hard to find, the straight line between title and content, okay? It's there. It may be not quite so straight, but I wouldn't put a lot of energy into that, okay? Because you may be wasting your time. And you probably don't need to ask me later what's the exact connection, because I may say, I don't know, find it. It's in there somewhere, right? Now, we live, the state has to propagate a lot of myths, because if it told the straight truth to us, we wouldn't put up with it anymore. Okay, so that goes without saying. And There've been movies, and there's been a lot of fiction and movies and novels that try to make this point. I don't know if most people get it, but I mean, think about The Matrix, for example. There's a great allegory about how states operate, right? I mean, they made it very literal, where they actually created reality by basically hooking people up to these elaborate technological devices and make people, in effect, imagine the reality they want you to imagine. And, of course, some people are able to break through, and it's a great story for that reason. There was a great libertarian point there, a great symbolic point. And there are other examples. I mean, think of 1984 with how the proles, right, the great mass of people who just go to work every day, and the whole aim, the government's propaganda effort to them is just to make sure they never pay any attention to what the government's doing. Just let them know that we got everything under control. Yeah, there are threats first from East Asia, and then there's threats from Eurasia, and it can switch, in a moment, mid-speech it can switch, right? The enemy changes, and no one ever acknowledges and says, hey, didn't they just change the enemy right there in the middle of the speech? I mean, because people have been so anesthetized that they don't ever look too closely. And Orwell's great insight was the use of language and the shrinking of the dictionary so that you couldn't even think about some things because the words had disappeared from the lexicon. And so things were beyond, outside of our range. So myths and fairy tales, fables are extremely important to the state. I think back, I told this story last year, I think, but some people maybe weren't here and didn't hear it. And I got this from a Paul Fussell speech that he gave, and he's certainly worth reading. I would read Wartime and his book on World War I, the title of which I forget, but wonderful de-romanticizing of war. And he was in World War II. But he tells a story, this was in the speech, I don't think this was in the book, about the first Gulf War, where there was some video that the Pentagon had of helicopter gunships firing down on Iraqis during the first Gulf War, and shearing them in half. I mean, literally, you could see this if you were watching this video. And somehow the existence of the video came to the attention of somebody in the media, and they asked the Pentagon spokesman, I think, why don't you release this video to the public? And I guess this person in the media knew what was depicted. I don't know if the person had ever seen the video, but knew what it showed. And the Pentagon person said, gosh, if we were to release that video to the public, there'd never be another war. Now, the funny thing is, Fussell found this in a book called something like 1776 of the Stupidest Things Ever Said. There is such a book, apparently, according to Paul Fussell. But Fussell's point was, that wasn't a stupid thing. In other words, it didn't belong in the book. It was a rather insightful thing, right? If people actually saw what goes on, they would be outraged. At least we hope they'd be outraged. I don't know, maybe people are so dumbed down and anesthetized that they wouldn't even be outraged by that. But, they don't even let us see coffins, right, with flags. They're going to show video of people being sheared in half by automatic weapons fired from helicopters. Now, I remember the movie Born on the 4th of July? It was a biopic about Ron Kovic. I remember going to that movie, and now that was, true story, but fictionalized. That was Oliver Stone, and of course, Stone likes to mix a lot of non-fact in with the facts, so you got to do some research later to find out what exactly happened and what didn't happen. But I remember the opening scene of that movie very well. I was living in Northern Virginia at the time, and I saw this in the theater, and you have to assume that if you're living in Northern Virginia and you're in a movie theater, there's probably some military people in the audience, okay, because of where we live, not far from the Pentagon, for example. And the opening scene of that movie is a very terrifying scene. I don't know if anybody remembers it, but it's a Vietnam village, and there's you see the little huts, you see people scurrying around, and you hear gunfire, automatic gunfire, and there's a menacing U.S. helicopter. I don't know what they were back then, Apaches or something.